Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. This video I wanted to cover GDAX stop, buy, and sell orders. If you ever wondered what those were, how you use them, this video is for you. And I hope to, in this channel, go over basic things like that, having to do with trading, a more objective side of it, just what the numbers mean and how you interpret them. And so yeah, this is gonna be a video on setting stop, buy, and sell orders, and hopefully I can give this to you in a way that's really useful and you can incorporate it in your trading. And I do want to say as well, I'll just jump right into the screen here, move that out of the way. Part of the reason I'm doing this is because I got a request to do this, and I understand that this is something that is slightly more complicated, and I don't fully know how to say this. Venu Gopal. That's my best guess of how to say that. Appreciate the request, and I think it's something other people are gonna. It's probably why you're watching this. You're gonna find useful as well. And anyway, I have already done videos on explaining, the basics of what, even the candles and this graph mean. What all this, just the basic overview of all this has been covered. The video I last posted having to do with crypto is also covered the basics of what a market order is, and how to set and sell limit orders. And if you don't have a basic understanding of those, I do think it would be easier to understand stop, buy, and sells if you have a rough understanding of those two, because stop is a little bit more, it's a little bit less intuitive, and I think that it can be helpful with these. So I'm gonna end up, I think it's just gonna I'm gonna end up covering limited market very briefly, because it's gonna help me explain the difference and how this is used, how stop, buy, and sells are used here as well. But if I don't know, if you don't already understand these, I think it's going to help you to understand stops when you understand limited market. Anyway, okay, so let's get into this. Stops are potentially extremely useful, and they're a feature of GDAX that they haven't always had. It's a relatively new. GDAX isn't that old, but even for GDAX, this is a relatively new feature that they added, and it is very common in any kind of exchange. They usually do have these. So if you end up getting into crypto in other areas, you're probably gonna see stop, buy and sell options there as well, or a lot of times you'll see something like, you might say stop loss. That's a really common way of referring to it, which I think is arguably a little bit more intuitive way of thinking about stop sells. But anyway, so I think the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to explain how these work by how you may use them, and hopefully you can then get creative yourself and apply them to your different scenarios. So I think I'm going to just create a scenario when you might want to do a stop buy and a stop sell, and then I'm going to actually put in some orders myself, and I'm also going to go in after I do that. So I'll probably do a fake stop buy order here, and then I'll do a fake sell order, and then I'll talk about this limit price thing here, and what that has to do with. But let's just get into this. So basically, so a stop buy is basically how you would use that is, a lot of stop orders in general are basically used as a way to confirm a trend. And so, for example, a lot of times if Bitcoin is going down, you want to know the trend has ended before you buy in. So you might want to wait for a bounce, essentially, to confirm that, okay, this is over. And obviously, for a price to bounce, the price needs to come up a little bit, and so that might be what you would do to basically you would end up setting your buy higher than the current price. What a lot of times, for example, when you go over limit orders, whenever you do a buy, you're setting it below the current price, and of course, everyone wants to buy low and sell high, and so um, that's a very simple thing to understand. So setting a limit buy is very intuitive. Say the price right now is 9,790, and I think it's going to go lower, so I would set my limit, and I want to catch the price at maybe 9,000 or something like that. So I'd put a limit buy at 9,000. But with a stop, I would possibly be thinking something like, we've got a nice little wave pattern here, and I want more confirmation that this is the bottom, so I want to see price go up a little bit. If I could theorize that if the price goes above this last little high here, maybe at 10,600, then I feel confident that we're going to be in an uptrend, and I want to buy, even though it's higher than the current price. I want to buy anyway, which is, like I said, it's not the way you would normally think about buying, but it's a very useful tool. So if that makes sense, because the price is going up, I could potentially use a stop buy as a way of confirming that price is going to go up higher. So I'm gonna basically follow the trend and buy in after I feel the trend has continued. That's an example of a stop buy. Just explaining it as practically as I can. That's one way you'd use it. But the fundamental thing is, when you do a limit buy, you set it lower than the current price. So I would use a limit buy to set a buy anything lower than 9,790. When I do a stop buy, I'd have to set the buy higher than the current price. And yeah, hopefully that makes sense. And so let's go to sell. So just like a buy is something that you would set higher than the price a lot of times you would use it to confirm a trend. You would do a stop sell, which is often called a stop loss, which is, I think, a great way to refer to it because I think it's more intuitive. Stop loss is something that you would often use to stop your loss. For example, if the price was, if I had bought in and the price, at 9,790, thinking that it was going to go up to 12,000 or some higher price, but you obviously don't know the future. You don't know what's going to happen. If you could set a stop sell lower than the current price, thinking that if the price did drop from here, maybe if it went down to 9,500, you think that's a confirmation that it's going to go down further. So you could set a stop sell at 9,500. So you could exit, you could get out and then buy down lower than the current price again later, for example. So it's another thing, just another example way to explain it. You've got your orders in. You're long, like for example, I'm long 0.02 Bitcoin now, and say I'm going to sleep and I think we're going up in price, but just in case, I want to be able to actually sleep at night and not be so afraid that I'm going to wake up with Bitcoin at 7,000 tomorrow and then I'm, have a huge percent loss. I could set a stop sell at 9,500. So if the price goes under that, I'm out, and at worst case scenario, I only have that whatever percentage loss that is, or whatever money that represents. And you can get really creative because you can mix stop sells with limit buys. So I could set a stop sell at 9,500, and I could also come over here and put a limit, excuse me, a limit buy at something like 9,000 or 8,000 or whatever you want. So you can of course get as creative as you'd like, mixing these things up. Just as another thing to like options to consider, because I don't really want to get into how I don't really want to tell someone how to trade necessarily. I more want to tell you how to use these, and so I'm giving you examples of trading with them to help you get creative yourself. But I'm not the mountain drops and all that stuff I'm using, I'm not really wanting you to take seriously. It's more the interpretation of how these work that's important for me to tell you, just to clarify. But I am going to try to just give a very basic warning, I guess, just because some things can happen, and I think it's just helpful to understand this. But like, what can happen is if someone had if I had set my stop sell at 9,500, afraid that if it went down that far, it would go down lower. It doesn't mean that it's going to do that. And so if I'm sleeping in my trying to be able to sleep through the night, knowing I won't have a bigger loss than I can handle, having my stop loss set, what can happen is in the middle of the night, it could go down to 9,400. So my stop sell was triggered at 9,500. So I'm out of the trade now. It goes down to 9,400, but then it bounces up. And when I wake up, it's actually all the way back up at 12,000. So I'm out of the trade, and I stopped myself from my loss, but I never was able to buy back in because it wasn't there. And that's something that can happen. Just as an example to think about. You may be able to get out, but then if you're not there, you're not going to get back in either, unless you've set your limit orders or set some other stops and things like that. So just you're still not completely safe. You still have to put some thought into this and make sure you've considered the possibilities of your your action. So anyway, just wanted to explain that really quick. So hopefully this kind of makes sense. So now I'm going to do a stop buy. Let's just do that. I'll do a example where I just fill these out, and just like always, it really literally pays to double check that your numbers are right. It can be really easy to like both these say USD. If I'm not paying attention, I might put in what should be in stop price in the amount and things like that. And you can't really reverse some of this stuff once it's gone. I mean, you could buy back again if you just sold, if you're lucky. But another thing that's probably worth saying is market is what they call a taker. So it's gonna automatically, if I was doing a market buy, it's going to find the limit sell closest to so if I did a market buy, it's going to simply go out on the market right now and find the limit sell closest to the next market buy, if that makes sense. So there's already something out there, and a market buy is going to take it. There's already Bitcoin sitting out there, and it's going to take the lowest amount of the lowest price for whatever, for the amount that I want to buy. And so what can happen, just to explain this, is if I execute a market buy now at when the last trade price was 9,790, it's not necessarily a given that my market buy will go through at the same price, because it's not necessarily a given that there is a limit sell already sitting out there. And so this is the limit sells here. So this is what I can see. So I can be fairly confident. Obviously it's bouncing around, but I could be fairly confident that if I wanted to buy, I only have $18. So I'm probably going to get it filled, because you can see at $9,780.01 if I did it right now, because there's 17 market Bitcoin sitting there, which is obviously very much enough for my $18 to fit well inside of, and I should be able to fill it there, but it's not necessarily given. And another thing that's probably worth clarifying as well, again, is that market orders are that GDAX charges a small fee for them. And the reason I'm kind of extra clarifying market here is because stop, buy, and sells are market orders. So when they execute, they're going to have a fee for one, and then it's not necessarily a given. They will execute at the price you set. that's when it will turn on, but it will find a market order once the price hits that. So it's not necessarily going to be the exact price that you set. I think that's fundamental and needs to be roughly understood at a minimum. Anyway, so that's why I say like understanding what a market buy is and a limit buy and sell is a kind of you need to understand that to get this. So I think this is making enough sense, hopefully. So let's do my example again. So the amount is the amount we want to buy. I'm just going to say $18, and then so we're doing a stop buy. So counterintuitively, arguably, it would be I want to buy higher. So I would say let's buy it at 10,000. So 10,000. And so I want to buy $18 worth of Bitcoin when one Bitcoin is worth $10,000. So basically, like I said, I'll just over clarify. I'm doing this because I think that if the price goes to 10,000, we're going to go higher. And another caveat is I'm not necessarily saying that's the way you should be thinking. I'm not saying that's not necessarily a good trade. This is just an example. Here we go. Let's place buy order. And so it says this order may fill at a price less favorable than the stop price. Are you sure you would like to continue? And that's basically saying this is a market order. And when the price hits 10,000, it's going to execute, and it's going to take the nearest limit sell to my price, and it's going to execute until I've filled up my tiny, very, very small order of $18. But this becomes a lot more important when you have larger amounts of money. If you had thousands of dollars, large amounts pretty relative, but if you had tens of thousands of dollars here, when you set a market order, you could end up market buying much higher, because you could end up absorbing a lot of a lot of limit sell orders, just because if you look here, there's only so much Bitcoin that could be purchased at a certain price. Anyway, so hopefully that makes sense. So I set my stop. So basically what's going to happen, to be really clear, is when price reaches, when one Bitcoin is worth $10,000, my market buys going to execute. So that's as simple as it is. Let's go over to stop sell, also called stop loss, and let's do a similar thing here. So let's say that I'm looking at this, and I think I don't want to get into this too much, but I see that the limit sells that are out there are relatively low compared to the limit buys, and I think that we're actually going to go up in price, but I want more confirmation because we're obviously in a down. These are red candles, and we're in a short-term downtrend. So there's a possibility that we're going to go down lower. So I think if we go down, past, let's just say 9,000, then I'm afraid we're going to really drop. So let's do I'll set my stop loss to limit my loss. So if we go down to 9,000, I want out. So I would do, so just to point something out again, this is now in Bitcoin. When I did the limit buy, this is in US dollar. It kind of makes sense just because that's the pairing. But there's multiple ways it could have made this that would have been accurate, but they made this BTC. So if I was thinking, I just put in $18, I'll just do myself for $18. That's not going to work because it's obviously 18 Bitcoin. And I know that could sound insultingly simple, but it's really easy to make those mistakes. So you don't want to sell 18 Bitcoin when you think you're selling $18 worth of Bitcoin or something like that. So let's do 0.01 Bitcoin. I'm a high spender. I'm being sarcastic. 0.01 Bitcoin, and I'm going to do it at 9,000 because that's what I set it in my example, and place sell order. It's the same thing. It's warning you that it's a market order and it's going to execute once the price hits 9,000, but you're not guaranteed to get that price. Okay, so there it is. It's just sitting there, and it's waiting to fill essentially until the price hits 9,000. So if it hits 9,000, yeah, I'm selling 0.01 at the market price, and I will get a fee for that, a small fee for that, because it is a market order. And the way GDAX works is the takers pay the fee, the makers don't pay any fee. So if that makes sense. And okay, so let's go back here. There's just one other thing that I want to clarify. I don't honestly think for the majority of people it's really gonna make a huge difference, because you don't have to do this. It's just, I'm just going to clarify it because I'm talking about it. But let's go back here again, and I'm going to talk about limit price, because I think it's not necessarily intuitive, and it can be helpful, especially if you're buying or selling a large amount of money. And so let's do an example with that. So let's go back to my $18 of my stop buy order, and I want to stop buy at 11. Can't remember what I said last time, but I'm just going to say 11,000. Oops, 11,000. And so, like I said, since this is a market, it's not guaranteed that it's going to fill at that exact price, but I can force it to fill within a certain price. So basically, if my $18 doesn't fully fill at 11,000, it's going to let it fill all the way up until the amount I set here. So if I had something like a lot higher number, I'm just going to say, I don't know, 18,000, still not that much more. But say I had 18,000, I was afraid that it was gonna fill too much of the limit cells that were setting out there, and it was gonna potentially be too high of a range. Like if I didn't fill everything between 11,000 and $11,005, then I don't want to buy. So it's basically gonna fill all the orders between 11,000 and 11,500, and then it's gonna stop. It's not gonna sell. It's not gonna buy anymore. And it's just a way to force my order to stay between these two prices, if that makes sense. So let's put this back to $18 because that's all I have in here. Make sure that that's going to work. There we go. So it's sitting out there, and it's going to force it to, once the price hits 11,000, that's where it's going to come into play. It's going to do a market sell, and it's going to force it to stay underneath $11,005. And then I'm just going to be overly clear and do a sell for the same thing. So let's do 0.01 Bitcoin, and let's do a stop price of 9,000. And so similarly, I'm going to say I want to make sure that it executes within $5 of 9,000. And so I want to make sure that between 9,000 and 8,995, my whole order of 0.01 is executed, which I can guarantee you it would be, just because it's so small. And let's just place it for fun. Booyah, sitting out there, and that's that. So anyway, that is basically a quick overview of how to use, buy, and sell stop orders, and hopefully that makes sense. If you have any further questions, I will do my best to answer, and I love hearing from you guys. If this was helpful or not, let me know. If you have other questions, I'll try to answer, and I might post videos. And like the reason I'm posting this video is because there was interest in this. And anyway, I appreciate you guys taking the time to watch this. Hopefully it was helpful. Hope you have a great day. If this was helpful, give it a thumbs up. Subscribe if you want to watch more videos like this. And anyway, I will talk to you later. Have a good day.